Okay, I'm going to try and give you a little bit of an overview. If I was to do this animation, it's just a guy lifting up a box and throwing it. How would I go about just getting this done? I mean, this kind of action, it's not a cyclical action. Okay, so, well, first and foremost, what's the first thing that I do? Well, the first thing I do in this situation is I block out the principal key poses. So here we've got my character. And just to show you what I mean by this, I'm going to select him. So what you basically have is this pose, this, 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 and this is really as far as I've got. So right now you'll notice there is no interpolation between these poses. Now what I do, so first of all you block out, you step your poses. Now the way to do that, if you go into Windows, Settings, Preferences, and then you go to Animation, what I want my poses set on my animation here is not this spline. I mean, it's gone back, it's defaulted to this, but when I was doing this was set on linear. I mean, it actually doesn't matter about the first one, it can be spline or linear. I think I've normally got it set in linear and then stepped. Now if I do that, linear and stepped, actually I'll make sure I've just saved it, Settings, Preferences, go back to this, linear and stepped, I'll press save. I'm just going to show you with the ball. So I'll create a polygon primitive, a sphere at the same time. I'm going to create a sphere. I'm just going to lift it up, make it a little bit bigger, and just show you. If I key it there and then go to frame 60 and move it, it will jump. Yeah. Now, this kind of stepping your animation is fantastic in order to get an idea of what you're doing, because just to show you, if I was to select all his controls and if I go in and spline this animation, so presently it's stepped, so it looks like this, it looks a bit unusual, you've got this kind of look to it. If I was to spline this just to see, just with these few poses, I can spline it even by pressing the spline button or the auto key, which gives me a spline with flat tangents at the top of each curve. So I'll press auto just so you can see what it looks like. And now, if I was to play this, it will look like this. You understand? So that, so with those few curves, you get this very drifty, floaty kind of animation going on, yeah, which isn't what we want. So I'm going to put it back to what it was, yeah. Now, I'll just open up the second one of these. What you can see is there are very few frames in this. I'll get rid of the circle now. There are very few frames. You've got him looking at the box, dropping down, lifting up, and so the timings are completely predetermined at this stage where I've made my new keys. Now as you can see, if I was to leave it like this, all Maya will do is it'll interpolate from the first frame. I'll just do it between these two. So if I just select this, I'm going to just select this, just the curves. I'll select the curves, and I'm just going to interpolate between the first two frames. See, I find when I'm standing looking at the box from frame 1 to 30, and then to move slightly after 30. If I was just to interpolate this, make this a spline, all that will happen is he will be moving towards the box for that, and this is not what I want. So obviously I would need to make, with all the controls selected, make another point somewhere on this line, say in frame 20. If I key again, maybe make some subtle adjustments to this, just to show you what happens if I make some subtle adjustments to him now, looking at the box. I'll just make some few adjustments like that. Yeah? Now you'll see what happens is you get this. Actually, before I do that, I should spline this. So I'll just go to frame 20 and I'll interpolate this again with this extra key in there. So I'll press on auto and we'll look at this again. So you see now you have this. Now you do have him waiting before he drops down and picks up the box. Okay, the next thing to say, this is really just an overview of the process. I'm not going to go into details of how I'm finding the poses. So the next thing I always, when I'm in this stage, the step stage of the animation where I'm just making keys, I always make sure to key every frame. And the reason for this is it stops you from having problems further on down the line. For example, if I key every frame on the first frame and then say in frame 20, imagine I hadn't keyed every frame, but I'd only just like, for example, hang on, I'll make him go, say if he's coming down like this, imagine I want him to stay down for a bit longer, and I decide, okay, I'm going to have this down here like this, and I just key that frame on frame 38, but I don't bother selecting all the rest. You can see there's only 2 frames here, or a few that have been keyed. If I then select this and I interpolate it, what will happen is all the other keys that haven't been keyed, they will start interpolating. They will still interpolate from this frame here to this frame here. So just to keep it clean and to avoid any problems, I always key, when I'm stepping the animation, I key every frame. Okay, look, I'm going to open up the second scene so you can have a look, and I've just gone and put some more keyframes in. So now on the second scene we have, oops, I'll just show you. If I select him, you can see so we've got some more keyframes. You've got him standing, and we've got some in-betweens now, and then again throwing the box, but I haven't bothered to make him land yet, so we've just got this. And if we go into the third, then there's a landing here, but again, so we've got the, we'll just make this a bit bigger, got him going backwards, forward. Now the timings here, we won't know till we've splined it if these timings are working a lot. Now some animators will just keep on adding more and more in betweens, but I find there comes a certain point where I want to spline it and then have an idea of how it's moving. Okay, so this presently, I'm not sure. It's, you know, but I know what the key poses are. He goes down, he lifts up the box, he pulls it back, and he throws it. Yeah? Right. So that's number 4. Now I'm going to go to number 5 that I've done here, just so you can see some of the other differences. So here we go. Now what happens when I spline? Well, you don't even need to spline everything. You might just want to spline a section. So what I did when I was doing this was I thought, well, this is all in stepped mode presently. I thought I want to find out when he throws the box, you know, this bit here where he's going back, I want to see what this looks like. How does this work? Because obviously he's coming off the ground here and I want this to look good. So I just took these and this is the spline curve, and this is the auto. And they're similar. You can use either of these, but the auto has the advantage is it gives you a flat tangent when you have a curve that goes up and then down again. So I'm going to use the auto on this. Just now, you notice I've only splined the bit with the throw, and I'm going to have a look at this. So let's see, he goes up like that, and right, and I can look at that. So this is all still stepped, and we've got this going on here. Now what I would think, the first thing I'd think is looking at this is, well, how can I make the up and down in the air thing look better? So looking at this body here, I mean, we've done all this stuff with bouncing balls. We want the body to come down in a realistic fashion, yeah, not like this. So what we want is when it hits the ground, we want a sense of acceleration, because he essentially is now just like a falling ball. So even by dropping it like this on the body, so we have acceleration, this is where the feet hit the ground, and doing a similar thing here on the feet. We don't want the feet slowing down just before they hit. We want a kind of strong hit. You know, it might be possible just to get rid of this key here, and do the same on this one as well. I'm going to get rid of this key, and I'm going to look for some. Let's see what this looks like. Okay, so just looking at this little, it's already starting to play out a little bit better. And you can see he kind of stops there as well. You know, looking at this is what I wouldn't have seen this if I've stepped. He's going forward, but then he kind of stops. You see that in midair, and then he comes down. It's all looking a little bit strange. So at this stage, if I'm splining, oh, one thing I have to say, if you spline a section, the way I have, and you start playing around with it, what you have to do, if you want to maintain using splined curves and not go back to these stepped curves, is you have to make sure you go back into Windows, your settings, preferences, and go to animation and change this. In my case, I'm using auto, so I'm going to change it to auto, because if I make any new curves, if I make any new points in this section here, I don't want them to come as this type, otherwise I'll have a mix of stepped curves and splined curves. So I'm going to look at this. So I can see it stopping here in the Z translation. So look, and if I look here, I can see this already. It's a flat tangent, so I can get rid of this. Well, that's going to make him come forward. I'll check out the X translate. See, no, that seems fine. So let's see what's going on now. So now, I knew that we've got some strange stuff going on with the legs, which is probably due, if I look at it, to the pole vectors. If I actually, I'm going to put this back to where it is, perspective, and I'll look at, I think this is the pole vectors. So there are these controls in front of the knees. Oh, is this the arm or the knee? I'm just going to have a quick look. Oh, here they are. They're inside the box. So what I'm going to do is when he goes forward, for example, I'm just going to lift this back up a bit. When he goes forward, I have to make sure that these pole vectors, when he moves forward, are also forward, yeah? And they're still forward there. And by doing that, you know, you get that. Yeah, so you get this kind of motion. Yeah, so you have stepped animation to begin with. I knew it's still very rough, but you know, you're starting to get there, okay? Right, okay, so that's the first thing. You might spline a little bit of it. Okay, so this is number 5, and then I'm going to go into number 6 so you can see what's happening here. So now, you know, one thing that you hear people talk about is curves that they want. You have to, you know, remember to animate your curves, and what this means essentially is that when we move, we tend to move in. If you were to watch the trajectory of the way our arms and body move, we kind of move in curves. So I'll show you what this means. If I click on his wrist, see if I can do this. Okay, if I click on his wrist, for example, and I am just going to get rid of this motion trail handle here. So I'm going to click on his wrist. So here we've got him sliding backwards. You know, it's splined at the end. So I've splined just this bit. Boom, and he jumps up and he comes down again. Now I want to look at the arms. So let's say I've splined this little bit, and I'm trying to refine the motion slightly. So I'm going to look at the arms, and I can go into this visualize, create editable motion trail just on this hand and have a look and see how it's moving. So I can see it goes up, it's coming across, and then, you know, I might want this coming out a little bit more, so I can almost pull this out slightly. I want this more of a sweeping, curving motion. Might pull it out like this, and then dropping it down. The hand kind of comes to an abrupt stop here. I'd probably want this. This is an IK motion hand. I probably want this further back. Oops, not like that. And also another thing is you also look at these curves here too. This motion, I wonder if I could, if I maybe delete this altogether, maybe this will smooth it out, you know. Yeah. So I'm always trying to look and see how I can make the motion a little bit more fluid. Oops, there we go. So kind of looking at the motion, how can I make it more fluid? And by checking out the curves to making sure that, so I can see here already that this is, I can maybe bring this down a little. I mean, you don't have to be a slave to making everything smooth, but if you see like something that is very obviously jerky or jerking in a different direction, that will make the animation seem less organic. So so I'm just checking the curves here of the trajectory of his arm. Okay. Okay. So curves are very important. Yeah, in terms of you want the motion to be fluid. And the great thing about Maya is it has this visualize tool. So when you're looking at different parts of the body, you can create these editable motion trails and have a look at how it's moving. I'll just get rid of this one here, so you can see from this and you can actually edit them on the fly, you know, if you want to try and make alterations. But of course the most important thing is how it looks. But this will help you, you know. Perhaps I'd want his body going slightly further forward when it comes. Yeah. So use these tools at your disposal. The next thing, and something I haven't really talked about, but I've started off, is you think, well, how is he picking up the box? So I'm just going to go to the next one, which is number 7, where I've refined the spline at the end bit even more, and you can see I've been looking at the curves of this, how his body's motion, how his body's moving. Sorry. But next thing you think, well, how does he pick up the box? You know, we've got the box in the ground. How on earth is he managing to pick this up? Okay, so I'm just going to talk about that now.